Hi, it's Darcey here. Thank you for taking the time to answer my questions. Question 1. Could you explain the central themes of Storyland and how you hope your readers will connect with them?
So, as Storyland is Blackwell's book of the month this month, one of the booksellers has very kindly sent me some questions to answer about this book. So let me see how we go. Could you explain the central themes of Storyland and how you hope readers will connect with them? Okay, one of the central themes is why we tell stories about where we have come from and how we use those stories. Another of the central themes is how we tell ourselves that we belong somewhere. What stories do we tell ourselves so that we feel like we belong? And what stories have we told ourselves in the past to feel that way? So, for instance, one of the characters, Brutus, who comes to found Britain, the story is that he was given a prophecy by the goddess Diana. And so for later British people, especially the English kings who claimed to have sort of taken his throne, this gave an awful lot of authority to their claim to be kings of the whole of Britain, not just of England.
Question 2. What is your favourite myth?
My favourite myth is the story of the 30 Syrian sisters, who the eldest of whom is called Albina, who get cast adrift in a rudderless boat by their dad, the king of Syria, because they try to overthrow him and seize his throne. So they get cast adrift and they end up getting caught up in a storm and being wrecked on the shores of an island in the Western Ocean that they call Albion. And that was the first name for Britain. It's the kind of name for Britain, pre-Britain. But I love the 30 Syrian sisters, and I love the idea of Albina because because there's no one else on the island, they have to learn to survive. And so they have to make nets for catching fish, and they have to make rope, and they have to make their own clothes and all that kind of thing. And so they become sort of survival experts, having been pampered princesses in a palace in Syria. So that's a really interesting story, I think. It's a medieval story.
Question 3. What was your writing process like for Storyland? Did you have a clear roadmap from the start?
Yes, I wanted to start with an empty island and use the medieval stories about its deep past to populate it and end up with an island more or less recognisable to us today. So it begins in Syria, many thousands of years before the Common Era, and ends around the Norman conquest of England. And so I had that was my roadmap, but also when I was choosing which stories to include, they just had to have magic in them and marvels and supernatural things. That really mattered to me. And also I had to be able to draw pictures of them, because I feel like if you can draw a picture of a story and it's an exciting picture, then it's an exciting story. It's worth telling.
Can you explain why myths are important?
Well, myths are often the product of stories told by more than one person. And when we tell stories together, they're better and more interesting and more true in ways you might not immediately guess than when we tell stories on our own.
My last question is, which mythical character would you be and why?
I'd be the child Merlin, because everyone thinks he doesn't have any power, but he's secretly incredibly powerful. And he also likes to go off on his own in the woods, which I think is an admirable trait, as long as the woods are safe.
Can I also say how much I love the illustrations in your book too?
Oh, And this bookseller who wrote these questions says she loves the illustrations, which is really kind. The illustrations are lino cuts, and this is it's a printmaking technique. So you carve into the lino, and it's like drawing with a white pen. Everything that you carve will show up white, because then you roll ink over the block, and then you press it onto paper, peel the paper off, and you end up with a black image with white lines on it, which is what you've carved out. I think it's a really delicious medium. It's really dramatic and graphic, and I just love the whole process of it. And I like carving. It's like using a sort of sharp tool instead of a pen. It's quite thrilling. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to answer my questions. Darcey and Willow out.